We're about ready to get started. You're a fairly docile group this morning. You got quiet very quickly. Usually we have to bring in the artillery and try to tamp it down, so we'll see what that turns out to be today. Let's begin with prayer. Heavenly Father, today we turn our attention to the end of life, to those who may be facing their end and to those who are attending them as they face their end. Lord, help us at this time in life to find the courage to speak the things that are on our heart, to find healing for the wrongs that have been done, to find peace with having to say goodbye to people who have been a part of our lives for so many years. In every way, Lord, attend us in these moments and help us today as we share our own thoughts so that we might better be those who are there to attend. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. So before I forget, next week is the holiday weekend, so there won't be class next week. So our last class will be the second weekend in July. So last week we had talked about grief, and I had another poem that I found, and which has been handed out to you. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time on this because I think it adds to what we were talking about last week and the feelings and the struggles that go with the grieving process. So this poem was written by John O'Donohue. I don't know if any of you are familiar with him. Is there anybody here who has read any of his writings? He was born in the mid-50s and died in the early 2000s. So he was, I think, 52 years old when he died in his sleep, which was a shock to all of those that knew him. He was a Catholic priest, was also a philosopher, was a poet, so a man of many talents. And he wrote this poem, and it should be for grief, not on grief, but it's close anyway. When you lose someone you love, your life becomes strange. The ground beneath you gets fragile. Your thoughts make your eyes unsure. And some dead echo drags your voice down where words have no confidence. Your heart has grown heavy with loss. And though this loss has wounded others too, no one knows what has been taken from you. So I just wanted to emphasize there how he describes it's kind of like an earthquake, isn't it? So when you're used to walking on firm ground, you don't really think too much about it. It's just kind of the normal thing. But when the ground shifts underneath you, and you think of what's going on in Venezuela, again, when the earth is removed and the mountains are cast into the midst of this, what an upsetting time that is. And so John talks about that in the grief process, that everything you thought you knew, that everything you thought that you could count on, it has all kind of been shaken. It has all been taken away. And so what that does, it puts you into this place where you feel like you don't know anything, you don't understand anything, you don't know what to say about what is happening to you. And then he goes on, when the silence of absence deepens, flickers of guilt kindle regret for all that was left unsaid or undone. There are days when you wake up happy, again inside the fullness of life, until the moment breaks and you're thrown back onto the black tide of loss. So again, what he talks about is all these thoughts that come to us. Why didn't I say? Why didn't I do? So all those regrets, and we spend a lot of time with recriminations, with beating ourselves up, with depression, with saying, that opportunity is gone. I'll never be able to, say what I had wanted to say at that point. So this is another aspect of grief, isn't it? That, not only is our world shaken, but now our world is filled with all of these doubts and these self-recriminations. And then he says you wake up happy, and you're inside the fullness of life. But the moment breaks. It doesn't last. So you have a good day for a part of the day, and then you're back on the black tide. Days when you have your heart back, you are able to function well until the middle of work or encounter, suddenly with no warning, you are ambushed by grief. Have some of you had that experience, that you got ambushed? And maybe it was a song on the radio, maybe it was a smell, maybe it was something that you saw, but we call these triggers. And you never know when those triggers are going to come. You never know what is going to precipitate that. 2 years ago, we moved to a smaller house. And we're cleaning out the old house, and we had this big box in the bedroom that hadn't been opened in 38 years. So we thought, well, I suppose, let's see if there's something in there, and is it something we want to take along? So we opened the box, and on the top of the box was a guest book from my farewell service in Marquezan. So it had been laying there for 38 years. And I opened it, and I looked at the names, and I burst into tears. And that was the trigger. It was 38 years, but that was the trigger. And it just brought back memories, it brought back conversations, it brought back experiences with the people whose names were on that book. And that's grief. I thought, well, I had long since moved on from leaving, but I hadn't, because grief told me, no, you're not done with that yet. It becomes hard to trust yourself. All you can depend on now is that sorrow will remain faithful to itself. More than you, it knows its way and will find the right time to pull and pull the rope of grief until that coiled hill of tears has reduced itself to its last drop. What I think is interesting in this statement is that he says grief is in control. We have this idea, don't we, that we are in control of our thoughts and our feelings and our actions. And to a certain extent that is true. But grief has its own mind. And I think he really describes this so well, that grief is going to do what it's going to do. And I think sometimes that is the struggle for us, because we tell ourselves, well, I shouldn't be feeling that anymore. I should be in a better place. I should have moved on. And grief says to us, you're not in charge here. I'm the one who is directing the agenda. Gradually, you will learn acquaintance with the invisible form of your departed. And when the work of grief is done, the wound of loss will heal. And you will have learned to wean your eyes from that gap in the air and be able to enter the hearth in your soul where your loved one has awaited your return all the time. Very profound, I think. That grief eventually leads us to that point where it's really in here, isn't it? It's in our heart. It's in our soul. That is where the healing ultimately takes place. Any thoughts or comments that you have on the poem thoughts that it might have engendered in your own mind. How many of you think that it describes grief pretty well? Yeah. Okay. So today, we're going to spend the next 2 weeks on the subject of end of life because there are so many different aspects to it. So I want to start with the introduction today. And I wanted to contrast the words that Jesus speaks on the cross when he is dying and the words that come from the mouth of David as he knows that his end is coming near. And it's really interesting to me to look at the contrast between those two. So I put down Kings chapter 1, but it should actually be chapter 2 that we want to look at what David has to say as he knows that his end is coming. So you may recall when we were talking about Solomon and the time when he ascended to the throne, that it's obvious that David is reaching the end of his reign. So it becomes obvious to all of the people in the court that David is losing his strength and losing his ability to govern. And if you know anything about the political process, when that happens, they say the sharks smell the blood in the water. And so what happens as they realize that this person is losing their ability to govern, all of the people that want to take the place of that person begin to emerge. And so what happens then is that David's son Adonijah decides that he would be the best one to succeed his father. And so he is gathering his political allies and is prepared to declare himself king. Solomon's mother finds out that this is happening. And so she and Nathan and a couple other people, they go to David and they tell him that this plot is brewing and that he had promised that Solomon would be king. So all of that has taken place. And so David declares that Solomon will be king and he is given the crown. So in chapter 2, when the time drew near for David to die, he gave a charge to Solomon his son. I'm about to go the way of all the earth, he said. So be strong, show yourself a man, and observe what the Lord your God requires. Walk in his ways, keep his decrees and commands, his laws and requirements, as written in the law of Moses, so you may prosper in all you do, and wherever you go, and the Lord may keep promises to me. So this is all good, isn't it? He's telling Solomon to, do what David had done, to be the man of God that he was supposed to be. But now you drop down to, again, my eyes are deceiving me here. I think it's verse. Anyway, he says, now you yourself know what Joab, son of Zeruiah, did to me, what he did in the two commanders of Israel's armies. So what he's talking about here is Joab had, again, done some very bad things. He had killed some people, and he had not done what David wanted him to do. And so now David's instructions are, you got to take care of that. You got to take care of your enemies. You can't trust him. You can't let him hang around. So I want you to make sure that he is taken out. And we're like, whoa, that's pretty harsh, isn't it? So what you see here is that David's focus is on eliminating the enemies so that your reign will continue without having those enemies lurking and conniving behind your back. So what I want you to see here is what his focus is. He knows he's dying, he's coming to the end, and as a good politician, he is giving advice to his son, this is how you're going to stay in power. So that's his focus. And I want you to think about people that you know who are coming to the end of life and what their focus is. And so sometimes it is kind of taking care of business. So sometimes it's passing on the business. Sometimes it's about the money. Sometimes it's about maintaining the position that you have attained. So again, it's all about the power. And that makes a lot of sense in a way, doesn't it? Because that's the way the world works. Now think about Jesus when he is standing in the presence of Pilate. And Pilate's a politician, and that's how he operates. That's his frame of reference. It's all about power and eliminating your enemies and keeping control of the people that are under you. And so Pilate looks at Jesus and he says, excuse me, they tell me you're a king. He says, I find that hard to believe. Are you a king? And what does Jesus say? Okay, he said, yes, I am a king, but not the kind of king that you're thinking of. I'm a different kind of king. And I just find that that is so, again, refreshing, and it is so different that he says, my kingdom is not of this world. So I don't operate like the politicians. I don't operate like the Caesars, and like you, Pilate, the governor. And like the Pharisees who are doing their own thing to carve out a place so that they can have their power over the people. So he said, I'm not like that. My kingdom is different. I am the king of truth. So I want you to think about that, how he says, I'm not into that kind of thing. And then we look at what he says on the cross and we say, oh, that's what you're talking about. That's the kind of power that you are speaking of. So I think it really sets us up to understand what his focus is as he is dying on the cross. So now we go to the crucifixion, and we start looking at those words. And the first words are, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. So we think about the dying process, and we think about all of the things that people have done to us, and sometimes we are thinking about what we have done to others. Well, Jesus hasn't done anything to others, has he? That would fall into the category of a hurt or a wound or a crime. But, wow, look at what is happening to him. I mean, this is really ganging up big time, isn't it? Everybody who is present at this crucifixion is against him, pretty much, aren't they? So you've got the Jewish authorities, you've got the Roman authorities, you've got the soldiers. And where are the disciples? How many of the disciples are there? Okay, John is raising his hand with one finger. And as far as we know, the only one who is there is the Apostle John, okay? Because he is standing with Mary, Jesus' mother. So we only got one of the 12 that is present at the crucifixion. So pretty much everybody that you can think of, those who were against him, those who were for him, none of them are for him now. What would that feel like to have everybody against you? What feelings might that arouse inside you? Fear. Okay, fear. Defeated, okay. So again, man, I got nothing going for me here. Yeah. Sue? Vengeful, yeah. Because when the people that you are counting on let you down, that obviously makes you angry. And when you get angry, then you also think about, well, if you're going to do that to me, then I'm going to do this to you. And so that's where the idea of vengeance comes in. Any other feelings or thoughts? Mm-hmm.
Loneliness.
Loneliness, yeah. We're all used to having this group around us, don't we? That we call family, children, siblings, parents, whoever might be alive at that point in time. Those are the folks that we are really counting on, aren't we, when we come to that final moment. So when they don't show up, that is kind of the ultimate betrayal, isn't it? It's very, very painful. Any other feelings? Yes.
Moral injury, like you've been terribly wronged and this shouldn't be happening.
Okay. The moral injury, too, is the idea that, well, this is just not right. And, you know, if ever there was that feeling, this is not right, it is the crucifixion, isn't it? So if anybody wants to understand the prime example, it would be this moment in time. So as you're thinking about that, isn't it absolutely astounding that he says, Father, forgive them? And what does he mean when he says they don't know what they're doing? How could the soldiers not know what they were doing? And all these other folks.
Crucifying the Son of God. They didn't do that.
Know that, okay. They didn't know who they were in the presence of, so that certainly was part of that. Any other thoughts that you have?
As the Son of God, his human life was not for the Romans to take away. He was part of his purpose. As the author of life, it was his human life alone that he would give up to them.
So it looks like the Roman authorities and the Jewish authorities are taking the authority to take his life, and Jesus says, actually, you don't understand that. He said, this is a sacrifice. And so again, that is brought out in many different ways that he willingly is doing this. Any other thoughts? Yeah.
It's an excellent example for us, because why would we want to enter heaven with hatred or disappointment or negative feelings in our hearts and souls?
Yeah.
It's really a time to forgive everyone and say, that's in the past, I know where I'm going.
Yeah.
And that's such a beautiful example that he gave to us.
All right, so Yvonne says, what a beautiful example of, again, not wanting to hang on to the vengeance and the anger and the disappointment, but again, to forgive and let go. And that is the example, isn't it? That's exactly what Jesus is doing. And my question as a human being is, how do you do that? You know, I understand what he is doing. And I'm trying to understand, how do I, as a sinful human being, with all of my faults and foibles, how do I come to that point? So looking again at they don't know what they're doing, sometimes it's helpful to look at that and to understand what he's saying is they're not aware. They don't really realize what they are doing, because they're so wrapped up in themselves. So taking the soldiers as an example, they have been trained to not have any feelings about what they're doing. And that's still true for the training of our soldiers today. They are desensitized. So you are made to look at your opponents as objects, as something that, again, you give it a name. And so we think back to the war and the names that we put on the Germans and the Japs, and so then it was easier to pull the trigger. So if you're desensitized, then you can do these horrible, cruel, unbelievable things to another human being. So sometimes it helps us as the person who is receiving that kind of abuse is to say, okay, I realize where you are, that you have no clue, that you have divorced yourself from your emotions. I forgive you for that. And sometimes what happens with our soldiers is PTSD and all these other things that later on they become aware of their feelings and the traumas that they have experienced, that have happened to them and they've inflicted on others. And then that becomes a different moment, doesn't it? So for the Jewish leaders, again, they're not aware either, are they? They are so intent on maintaining their hold over the people. And they are so intent on proving that Jesus is not who he said he was, that they just, they're able to block that out. And so, again, he forgives them for being blind. And he had pointed out to them many times, hadn't he, that they were blind and that they were whited sepulchres. They were very nice on the outside, but oh boy, don't go looking on the inside. You're not going to like what you see there. And what about the disciples? What did he understand about their lack of awareness? Remember Peter saying to Jesus, I'll go through thick and thin. I'll never deny you. And what did he do? He denied him. He ran away. So again, Peter was not aware of his own weaknesses. He wasn't aware of the chinks in his armor. And boy, that really hits home for all of us, doesn't it? That we may think we are solid. We may think, hey, I know, I've got all the information. I understand my faith. I'm living my faith. But we don't know ourselves totally. We don't know what's going to happen to us. We don't know the events that will come into our life that will shatter our self-confidence. Now we're back to that grief poem, aren't we? Where the ground shifts and we feel like we don't know anything. So for every person who has let Jesus down, he says, I know who they are, and I forgive them. So what I want to emphasize too is what Jesus is doing is opening his heart. He is making himself totally vulnerable. He is saying, I'm going to let all of this come in. I'm going to let this wound me. I'm going to let this hurt me. I'm going to let this kill me because I love. And so that's the goal for us too, to be able to love that deeply. Is it hard to open your heart and be vulnerable? Yeah. Because it leaves you wide open, doesn't it? And again, it may be the most beautiful time because you are open, and it may be the most painful time. It can go either way. And so I'm thinking too about how often I run into this with dying patients who go into this, and so often it'll be a father who divorced his wife, and now he wants his daughter to come and see him, and she's not responding to his texts. And so he says, Chaplain, what can I do? What else can I do? And what does the chaplain say? pray about it? Yeah. I want to call the daughter. I want to say, get your butt in here. You're running out of time. You're going to be sorry. But again, I can't do that. It isn't really going to help the situation. So that is one of those very, very painful moments where I sit with that father and I say to him, you've done everything you can, haven't you? So you have notified her, you've let her know, she understands the severity of the situation. So beyond that, and the mother told me too, where her daughter had blocked her, would no longer take her texts and would no longer take her phone calls. So what can you do? So the other thing I will say to that person then is, can you open your heart? Because getting back to what Yvonne said about the hurts and the disappointments, if we can't let that go, what does that do? Then it narrows our heart, doesn't it? And then it prevents our heart from getting to the place where God wants it to be. So that is what I'm saying to this gentleman then is, can you open your heart? Do you still love your daughter? Okay, then that's the important thing. And forgive her for not being able to come at this point in time. What may happen is that later on, the daughter may have regrets and wished that she had come, but hadn't. And so then you can work with the daughter, can't you? Then you can help her to say, it's still not too late. So any other thoughts that come to your mind as we talk about that? Yeah.
I was just going to say, it's not just the hurts in life that people have a difficult time dealing with at the end of life, but it's also very much the pleasures of life that they will be leaving that they have difficult times with. I've spoken with many people that are in their 90s, and it's come down to the natural end of life, and they are just so stricken by the fact that it's come down to this now, and they have such a wonderful apartment and wonderful friends, and they do such nice things with their family, they enjoy their accomplishments of their grandchildren, and they're just not ready to leave that.
Yeah. So you have the other side of the coin there, and we're going to spend some more time on that also, I think, when we get to the I thirst. But again, that is the other thing that's very prominent there. It's not only the relationships that are broken and that you are trying to find healing for, but also all of the good things that are in your life as well. So it's a combination of both of those things, isn't it? So going back to those broken relationships, when I was doing my chaplain training, we were told to write a story, pick a biblical character that we identified with, and then kind of write a story about that where we saw ourselves as that biblical character. And so the thought that came to my mind was Jacob wrestling with God. Jacob wanting God to bless him and not letting God go until he got that blessing. And the reason that came to my mind was because of my struggles with my father to get his blessing, to get his approval. And so the example I used was cultivating corn. And so Dad is trying to teach me. I'm maybe 12 years old. And he's standing on the back of the tractor, and I'm steering, and he's yelling in my ear, giving me directions. It's not going very well. And finally he decides that maybe he should get off the tractor and see how I do. So he goes home, and I keep on. And I kind of settle down. I get the hang of it. And then I get a little overconfident. And I thought, man, this is too slow, so I kick it up a gear. And I get the field done with, some times where I got a little off the row. And with a 4-row cultivator, if you get off 1 row, you're getting off 4. So I come home, and I say to my dad, I got the field done. And Dad goes out and walks the field and sees every place where I got off the row. So I didn't get the blessing. And as I'm reading this article to my classmates, I start crying. And again, that was a grief thing where it just came up, and I had no idea I was going to lose control. I was embarrassed, and I'm crying. And the supervisor reached for the box of Kleenex. And I thought he was going to give me the Kleenex, but he took one for himself. And he said, I'd be proud to have you as my son. And so as I think about that story, what that tells me in regard to these words is that it's never too late. My dad was gone. We never had the conversation. We never had that heart-to-heart. But as I'm telling this story, in 1986, and Dad had died in 79, so this is some years after, it's like it's right there. And this man saying to me that he would bless me, that's what I needed. So I want to emphasize that also. As we're talking about this father whose daughter will not respond to his text, in him telling me the story, and in me, again, listening and empathizing with the pain and the struggle that he's having, that became a blessing for him, didn't it? So this is something that we need to think about, because some of us are carrying those wounds like I carried with my father, thinking that the opportunity is gone. And I hope you can understand that the opportunity is never gone. So this is what's so important about having someone hear your story and hear your pain and hear your experience, and that will, again, bring you some healing and some forgiveness at that moment in time. So it's never too late, is it? Never too late to have those moments, even when we think opportunities have gone by. Any other thoughts or comments that you have about that aspect of reconciliation? Okay. Okay, so we got time for the next one. Yeah, oh, okay.
What do you do in a situation when you have a close person who's not a believer, and they are getting towards the end of their life, either age-wise or death-wise, and they won't listen, well, they may be listening, but they're not verbally, physically accepting. And I know we just continue to pray for them while they're still alive, but it's very difficult.
It is, it's very difficult. So again, if you have someone who is near death, and again, they don't embrace the faith, and how can we talk about that? Again, I go back to the crucifixion. And I want you to look at the number 1. So of all of the disciples that were there, John was the only one. So that's 1, isn't it? Of all of the soldiers who were at the cross, which one believed? the centurion, so that was one. Thieves on the cross, one believed. Of the Pharisees and the Sadducees, Nicodemus. So you have all of these ones, don't we? And some of them do not reveal themselves until after the crucifixion. So I want you to always keep that in mind, that when you are loving someone and ministering to someone who seems to be closed, you do what you can, and then you let it go, because you don't know what God is going to do with that. And it may be possible when you're not in the room that they are still thinking about what you said. And the other day, a lady was telling me about her niece. This niece loves her dearly, and she's an atheist. And she absolutely will not let her aunt talk about anything religious. And she's very frustrated by that. And I said, your niece loves you. She wants to be around you. She wants to do what she can to help you. So I said, just do the silent testimony. Love her back. Keep on telling her how precious she is to you and what you love about her. Just do that. And do not try to take her where you want her to be, but just love her. And you don't know what the impact of that will be. So I think many of us have those kind of situations where we know people. And I run into that a lot as chaplain, that I'm not able to take people where I would like them to be. But they allow me to come into their room. They want to listen. They want to speak to me. They want that ear. And so I take what I can get. And I have no idea what the end result of all of that will be. Any other thoughts? But I really, like your comment, Yvonne, because those are the hard ones, aren't they? When you're dealing with someone who is in the faith, that's a whole different ballgame. But it's good for us to get into territory we're not comfortable with. We should always be stretching ourselves. And I think that is the biggest blessing of chaplaincy, is that I have been stretched, I have been taken into places as a pastor I never would have dreamed of going. But it has really stretched me, and that is good. And again, I think when we think about Jesus, his love had no limits, did it? So even the people who vilified him, he still loved them. And he saw beyond what they were doing. He saw inside that there was still something there that he could touch. He had that ability. You and I can only, continue to hope that we get to that kind of level. We never will, but it's certainly a level to attain to, isn't it? Any other thoughts that come out of that? So I hope you see that this idea of reconciliation is really a very broad field. It has many different nuances to it. And I gave each of you a copy of the book today, and so again, maybe there's more detail in there that will be helpful to you also. So just use that as a way that might help you in some way. All right, let's go on to John 19. And what do we have there? Is that where Jesus takes care of his mother? Yeah. So he sees his mother, and he sees John standing beside her, and he says, "Woman, behold your son, and son, behold your mother." What's so beautiful and touching about that?
They needed each other.
Okay, they need each other. Mary's going to need a son, isn't she? Yeah. Teddy?
He's making arrangements for the future, like he's planning ahead.
Yeah, so I think that's a very important thing. He's planning ahead. So Mary had, been leaning on Jesus, even though he was out there doing ministry, so he really wasn't available to Mary on a everyday basis, but they had plenty of contacts as they were going along. But he wants to make arrangements to let her know, I'm going to be gone, but John will be there. So think about that, where people know they're coming to their end, and they want to make sure that everybody's going to be okay.
And I think that that's why it's so important that when people get older, whatever the getting older is, that they think about the people they are going to be behind and try to relieve them as much of the burden as possible of all the stuff and things that they're leaving behind, and be very clear if they care about something and if they don't care about something, and to just not be a burden on their loved ones after they're gone.
All right, so there are many, many things to think about then. And first of all is the stuff. And this is kind of interesting. Way back in 95, I think it was, Gene and I were going to go to Israel. And so we were thinking, well, we should have our documents. So we had our will made out. And then we thought we should have the kids over and just say, just in case the plane goes down over the Atlantic, and even though they have a flotation device, you know how much good that's going to do. So we said, if there's anything in particular of the antiques that we have and different things, and the kids just sat there for about 30 seconds. And then they got up and they started running around and putting their name on stuff, and so they got over it pretty quickly. But again, that was a helpful thing. And my mother did that. She had, my sister got the piano because Steve didn't practice and didn't continue with the lessons, so that made sense. And Steve didn't go, oh, I really like that piano. So Sandy got the piano. But she had everything spelled out. And that was very helpful, wasn't it? Then you have the other situation where the parents don't say anything, and then you have the free-for-all. And the siblings get together, and they all want the same thing, and what are you going to do with that? So that's just a very helpful thing, just in terms of the stuff. Now, beyond that, again, Jesus is looking at the relationships. So again, I think we want to be looking at that too. And so maybe the father will say, there's one of the boys that he particularly knows is dependable and follows through on things. And so he says, okay, you are going to be in charge of the estate. And you're going to be the executor. So you get into those kind of things. And then he's, okay, now who's going to watch out for mom? And so again, there may be a designee, or maybe they're all going to take turns, but you need to spell that out as well.
Jesus chose not family to look after his mother. He had brothers and sisters mentioned in the Bible, but he didn't say, hey, you're the next in line, you take care of mom. He chose his disciple. And sometimes, I think when people make wills and such, they don't always think about, you know, who's the best as far as they just pick, you know, the logical one. And I don't know, when my parents made their first will, I wasn't part of it, but I was 18. And sometime later, when they remade the will, I found out that at 18, if they would have died then, I would have been in charge of my younger brothers. And I said, what were you thinking? and you know, but you know, fortunately it didn't happen. But I think sometimes you do have to think outside the box a little bit to do the best thing.
So I think too, you know, Sue makes the comment that it's not always family. And in the case of the Apostle John, he was not part of Jesus' siblings. So that is quite unusual. But possibly Jesus said, John, I know your heart. You are the apostle of love. You're going to love my mom well. You're going to make sure that she is watched out for and taken care of. So it's a very touching thing, isn't it? And I think, too, that gets us into the power of attorney for health care. So who do you want in charge of the button when you're on the ventilator? And so you may pick your daughter, and then you find out that your daughter, she just can't do that. So she's going to keep you on that ventilator, and that isn't what you want. So you have to pick the child who's able to have the strength to follow your wishes there. And let me tell you, at Froedtert, we see a lot of that where end of life and the families are divided and they don't have that power of attorney. And mom would have, and then you just have a nightmare. You can't come to a decision. But that would be another way of taking care of making sure who's in charge of your final moments. In the world of medicine now, we can do all kinds of things to keep us alive, but we're almost not there. So we may be brain dead, but they can still keep us on the ventilator. And if you don't want that, you know, then you have to specify in your document what you do want.
I think that's really an act of love, to leave specific instructions for your children or any loved ones that you're asking to be responsible for. It's terrible things that your loved ones do.
It is definitely an act of love to let people know what your wishes are. So how come we do that so rarely? Very few people have left those instructions. Any idea why we don't have those documents in place?
To write it down, you have to admit you're going to die.
All right. So there's something about writing it down is an admission that you are mortal. And hey, everybody knows I'm not going to die, so. And I think many people have that feeling that if you write it down, it means that you are probably going to die in the near future. Well, Gene and I did that in '95, so evidently that didn't happen. But you don't know. But it's, you know, it's getting past that hurdle of, again, to make funeral arrangements. How many of you made your burial plans? Okay, a number of you have. And I say good for you. And again, what a terrible thing to be making funeral arrangements when you don't know what mom or dad wanted. And again, the siblings are going to get into it, and you know, how much are we going to spend on the casket, and they wanted to be cremated or did they not want to, where are they going to be buried, and oh, it just goes on and on. So if you take care of that, there's no discussion, is there? Carrie?
Maybe some people don't do it because they don't want to scare their children.
Yeah. And there's that point too, that if you bring it up, you are going to raise the blood pressure of your kids. And probably they're going to say to you, why are you doing that? Don't talk like that. And I really see that even when people are actively dying, the children are saying, you got to eat. You got to get your strength up. You know, and because they cannot accept the fact that this is happening. So it's a very filled with all kinds of struggle and emotion, isn't it?
ago, Jeff was out somewhere, and had some time on my hands, so I sat down and started writing his obituary. I wish I had a picture of his face when I told him that's what I had done.
And Jeff was saying, do you know something I don't know? And he started checking his food, you know. Yeah. Oh, thank you for that. Yeah, and many people do, you know, write their obituaries, and again, it's so helpful. Jean?
What you were talking about earlier, I was reluctant to make those type funeral plans. You've already done yours. And then my dad died, and I saw how my brothers fought over what kind of casket should dad have, and so forth and so on. And so I said, okay, that's it. I'm doing it. Why put them through that?
Oh, that personal thing where I had gone ahead and made my burial arrangements, and Jean was quite upset about that because she was like, why'd you do that? And then as her father passed and she saw all of the wrangling that took place because Carl had not left instructions, then Jean decided, okay, I want to leave instructions, because you never know what our kids are going to do. So I know one thought I had too, I'm going to be cremated, and I wanted my ashes to be taken back to the farm, which is in Minnesota. And my kids said, we're not driving way out there. So I said, okay, I have to revise that plan. So that's why it's kind of good to have some conversation, because I would have assumed that they would, and my ashes would have sat on the shelf until my kids passed away.
We asked my dad if he wanted to be cremated or buried, and he said, surprise me.
Surprise me, yeah. So you cremated him, and I bet he was surprised, huh? Yeah. But yeah, it's so good to let people know. And in my early years, cremation was considered a no-no. You know, the Christians did not do that because I think at that point in time, people who did that wanted to escape the judgment. So they thought, you know, scatter my ashes and God will never be able to find me. But as time has gone on and we've gotten more into saving the earth, cemeteries take up a lot of space. And so the idea, we are going to go back to dust, and cremation just makes that process happen more quickly. So that's where I came to the point where I'm saying, I am not spending $10,000 on a casket, or maybe it's 20 now. You know, that's just crazy. I'm not going to put that kind of money in the ground.
Sorry, I was gonna say, like, my dad had asked that we put his ashes in the lake, like Lake Michigan, because my sister lives in Green Bay and I live in Milwaukee. And you can't just put ashes into the lake. Like and it's a lot of ashes, and it's actually illegal. You could go and do it, you know, if no one knew. I don't think it sat well with my mom, and so Dad was in the closet at my parents' house for 3 years. When my mom passed away, my sister and I decided, because Mom she just said she wanted to be cremated, but she never said like what to do. And so we decided to put them both into, what's the name called? No, sorry. We were at the cemetery in a columbarium, or I think that's what it's called.
Like a little niche,
Yeah, and so there's like a little trickle of water that runs near, and we said that when we come on Judgment Day, we'll let Dad know the lake dried up. So it's like kind of like, like adding a,
It's not Lake Michigan, but it's close, yeah. I think what you're pointing out too, Stephanie, is that a lot of times there are adjustments. And so wishes are not always carried out. And as I indicated too, my kids were like, you know, they couldn't honor my wishes. And so then you go to plan B. So there is flexibility there. But that taking care of business, and again, it takes courage for Dad to be lying in the bed and to honestly say, you know, this is what I want you to do. This is what you need to do for Mom. This is what I want you to do for each other. A lot of times there also are instructions. I want you to continue to get together. So a lot of times when parents pass, the siblings drift apart from each other because they always gathered at Mom and Dad's, and now they're busy and they have their own lives. So maybe if Dad says, you need to continue to foster the relationships between you, that is a precious thing. So we tried very hard, I think, in our families, in Jean's family and my family, to maintain those connections with our siblings. And that has been good. We can continue to tell stories, and there's no end to the stories of what Mom and Dad did for us. And that's a very, very healthy thing. All right, this is a good break point for us today, and then we will continue in 2 weeks. See you in 2 weeks. Bye.